Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. We are in baseball season. We will be at Fadley's on Wednesday doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. I got the tour off to a little start on Monday. Had my first crab cake of the season with Damie Hahn at Fadley's. They have a big thing going on with NBC this week and tapings going on down there. And we'll be talking more about that on Wednesday. We will have the scratch-offs from the Maryland Lottery, the Magic 8 balls to give away. Probably have some monopolies to give away before the end of the month as well. And the dates are all up at Baltimore Positive, and baseball season is here. Luke and I spent parts of last week in Toronto as well as Buffalo, where I had the best beef on weck ever. And the kids that did the big turn for Mark Andrews and for diabetes, we spent some time with their pops. So some things are going on. We're brewing up things here. Certainly the Orioles are brewing up an opening day. It was postcard, right? I mean, perfect weather, perfect everything. Red Sox are in. Pedro Martinez isn't pitching for them anymore. That's good. Luke Jones joins us now. We will discuss the pitching side of things because we talked at length about Cowser injury at bats, O'Neill, platooning, all of that. We'd like to think the bats are going to be fine and the bats will hold them together, and we're going to get Gunnar Henderson back, and there'll be a cavalry going on there this week. Pitching, I don't know. We're not even a week into this, Luke, and we knew it was going to be a little bit of a choppy ride all along. The Batista thing on opening day was most people were gone by then, or even drunk and gone by then anyway. So, but you do wake up and you say, all right, what do we have? What do we have in the bullpen, and how is this going to hold up? I know one thing's good. They didn't have to play on Tuesday.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, it's rare when you play the first 5 days of a season anyway, but when you have a first time through the rotation where, hey, Zach Eflin, thumbs up. I mentioned in a previous segment, Cade Povich does things that you like, and I think there could be a good pitcher in there, but he's not there yet from a pitch efficiency standpoint. We talked about Sagano on Sunday before the cramping, and at least showed some nice things, pitched competitively over 4 innings. But Charlie Morton did not look good. Dean Kramer at least pitched into the 6th inning, which at least gave them some length, but gave up 5 runs in the process. So, yeah, this starting rotation, the first time through, has been, I want to say it's exactly what we thought it would be, because I expect Charlie Morton to be better than he was Friday night at the very least, but not great. When you look at, and obviously, 'tis the season for small sample sizes. I think I looked Tuesday when before the league was starting action. I think the Orioles were 28th in starter ERA, which, yeah, that sounds about right. But their bullpen had been, for the most part, their bullpen ERA is in a good spot. I think it was top 10 over the first 5 games. Again, it's 5 games, but kind of gives you an idea of where they are. And I think the bullpen, for the most part, is pitched pretty well. I mean, certainly Batista ironing out the kinks. There's no doubt about that, and we talked about that. That's why it was so good that he didn't come into the game when it was 4-3 in the 9th inning, rather than being in a spot where it was 8-3, and he had a little bit of cushion because guy hasn't pitched since August of 2023. Let's give him a little bit of time here before we sound the alarm. As long as he's healthy, and the stuff is trending up in terms of velocity and how he's feeling and movement on his pitches and all that. But we've talked about it. I mean, this team is 3-2 through its first 5 games, and in those 3 games, they hit the ball. In the 2 games they lost, they didn't hit the ball. And in one of those games, they pitched so poorly that it didn't really matter. But Sunday, it was a winnable game, and they didn't hit. So we know it. As this rotation is currently constructed, and with the bullpen, I think there's more upside for the bullpen than I look at the rotation right now on paper. At least there's potential for the bullpen to be pretty darn good, especially once you get into the summer and Andrew Kittredge is back in the picture and all that. But we knew that pitching was going to be a challenge, and well, for the most part through 5 games, that's played out exactly as we thought it might. But the good thing is you do have guys who can hit. You can score runs because they're going to need to win games like that more often than not over the course of the year. It's really shaping up to feel that way.
You mentioned the early season stuff. My dad, being the mathematician, trying to teach me math at a young age on the back of baseball cards, they're all playoff averages, 286, 143. They're all divisible by 12 and 15 and 18 on the math side because it's that fresh into the year. But the pitching part of it is something we talked about it with Dave Sheinin a couple weeks ago at Pete John's. You and I went back into it as to, I mean, even you and I in the fight about how much money to give a seventh starter and Kyle Gibson and when the availability would be for some of these guys because they're going to have trouble in a general state. Don't have great pitching. And you mentioned Dean Kramer. I want to talk about Dean Kramer here because I like Dean Kramer. He's got my hair. Um, you mentioned, well, you gave him some length, went 6 innings, 5 runs. And I'm thinking, in the old days, they didn't let him do that. When he was the fifth starter, they had to go get him in the third inning or the fourth inning before that would happen. Because if Dean Kramer could give you 6 and 2 runs every night, that would be a different kind of Dean. We'd be real happy with that. So if you're going to get 6 out of him, expect it to be 5, right? And probably he will be one of the guys, unlike 41-year-old Charlie Morton, Sagana, who are already cramped and is an older cat to begin with, Gibson and whatever he's going to be whenever he gets here. Until then, Dean, get us 6. I don't care if you give up 7. Just get us. We'll score 8 if we have to. I think there is a little bit of that with the younger arms, and Eflin's not that guy either. That if there's a guy, you're going to let him out there a little while longer and let him clean up his own mess or make a bigger mess. Um, I think he might be the guy in that way that you're like, he gave up 5, but he made 6 innings. My old printer would always say, good, fast, cheap. Pick two. Pick two. You can't have all three. And I would say the same thing is true for most of these pitchers. Maybe not Eflin, but if you want some length, they're going to give up some more runs. They're going to have to battle through it. And Kramer was one of the worst at that, right? Amongst young pitchers in a general sense. Get a couple base runners on, guy makes an error behind you, umpire doesn't give you a corner call, and a guy hits a double. Just working through all of that. Kramer was one of the guys that struggled with big innings.
No question. As many young pitchers do. I mean, it's how many times have you seen a young guy, he's moving along, he's chugging along, it's looking like it's shaping up to be a good outing, and then, like you said, someone boots a ball, a bad throw, you don't get a call on a 2-2 pitch, it goes to 3-2, and you walk them.
Hey, dude, if Newcomb gets after Mullins in the first inning, the game's different.
Yeah, no question. I mean, it's, you hear the expression game of inches a lot across different sports, quite frankly, but baseball really is when you're talking about the strike zone and things of that nature. Just where you barrel up the ball, on the bat, the torpedo bat. There we go. We got the torpedo bat mentioned in there. But yeah, you make a good point as it pertains to their starting pitching right now, where look, you want to see shiny ERAs, you want to see good numbers, all of those things that you talk about when you're evaluating pitching. But, the thing that I really look at as you look at the Orioles rotation the first time through, and granted, you're coming out of spring training. Even 30 years ago, guys weren't stretched out on opening day to the same way that you would expect them to be stretched out in June. You didn't see. I can think of the strike year in '95 when the Orioles opened in Kansas City. Remember, Kevin Apier had a no-hitter going, and remember there was a abbreviated spring, and there was so much talking like how much more can you let this guy go? All of that, but you look the first time through the order, Eflin, 6 innings on 78 pitches, thumbs up, perfect. You couldn't have expected more from that. That you'll take that, right? You'll take that every day of the week in this day and age. But Morton, 3 1/3, 80 pitches. Kramer, as we mentioned, 5 1/3, 81 pitches. At least got into the sixth inning, gave them some length, even if gave up 5 runs in the process. Sagano, 4 innings, 73 pitches, had the cramping. He was coming back out to pitch the fifth. And then Povich, who, he racked up the strikeouts, did some nice things, but 4 1/3, 94 pitches. I mean, I think the fact that the Orioles allowed him to go 94 was a reflection of that was your fifth straight day playing a game. and your bullpen's worked a heck of a lot over the first 5 days. So, to your point, nice for them to have an off day on Tuesday to kind of exhale a little bit and settle in before they go back on the road in a couple of days. But you look at that, and for me, it's not even, whatever the ERA is, of those five guys, first time through the rotation, that's secondary to me right now. You're just seeing guys that aren't getting through 5 innings. It used to be years ago we talk about, man, you need guys that need to get through seven. Can a guy pitch into the seventh inning, the eighth inning? I mean, forget about that talk, right? I mean, yeah, and we even talked about it last year. It's not like Kevin or Corbin Burns did that all that much, pitching into the eighth inning, let's say, as a true ace in Major League Baseball and in the modern day. But when you're talking about guys that are not getting through four, not getting through five, it's one thing to ask, okay, how many runs are they giving up in the process? Just from a functionality standpoint, you're putting a lot on your bullpen when that's happening. And keep in mind, who was the long man in their bullpen on opening day? It was Albert Suarez. He's on the shelf now. So you have 8 guys in the bullpen that Aiken can give them some length, but Aiken's a guy that I think they actually look at the season he had last year and say, we want to use him in some, maybe not high leverage pitching in the eighth inning of a 1-run game, but he's a guy we might want to pitch in the seventh inning on occasion, in closer games because we think he's good. So you just look at that and you say, you don't have that that the proverbial six starter swingman kind of reliever in their pen right now. You have more of 8 relievers, guys that and like I said, Aiken can go more than an inning. Matt Bauman went more than an inning a couple days ago in Toronto, but you don't have that guy that's necessarily you're going to hand the ball to if the starter gets knocked out in the second inning because he takes a line drive off his forearm and is going to give you 4 innings. They don't have that reliever right now, so it just puts a lot of strain on your entire pitching staff, top to bottom. So that's where I look at this and say, that's why I your Kramer point resonated with me, where they need to give functional, competitive outings, even if it's not the prettiest statistically. Get through 5 innings, get into the sixth inning, and have a chance. Now, the offense has to play a part in that, because if you give up 4 runs and your offense only scores 1 and it's 4-1 going to the late innings, well, yeah, you're in trouble, and that's baseball. And you're not going to score 8 runs every single night, no matter how great your offense is. We saw this last year. For as much hand wringing and complaining there was about the Orioles offense over the second half of the season, they finished 4th in the major leagues in runs scored per game, even with that underwhelming second half. So it speaks to, one, what their offense can be, and 2, just what offense is in general in 2024, 2025, where we talk about pitching being what it is, with bullpen arms and all of that. But, they certainly are going to need their starters to go deeper than what we saw this first time through. And again, it's complicated by the fact that these guys weren't throwing 80 and 90 pitches in Grapefruit League outings. So,
but you say they're going to need that to happen, and I would have told you in March, even though it's April now, that's probably not likely with this group.
Well,
I mean, you and I both would have said that.
Then they're not. Then they won't go anywhere. They have to do that at least. You can't get 4. You've got to get guys that are at least getting you through 5, at least on some semblance of a consistent level, right? It can't be.
But what's it going to look like? What's 5 going to look like? I mean,
that's why I said
you're praising that Kramer got through 6 and gave up 5. I mean,
I'm not praising it. I'm just saying it's
that
functional
what
at least.
we're talking about? Is that the baseline?
I'm talking about this has to do with navigating a season and keeping your pitchers healthy. I mean, that's really what I'm talking about here. So, Charlie Morton, if he can't get out of the 4th inning, then he can't be in the rotation long term. I mean, like, seriously. I'm not asking guys to go 7. Let's be clear. I'm not even asking that guys have to complete 6 on a consistent basis. That's going to be a challenge. So, what you're saying, I agree to that point. But if guys aren't even getting into the 5th inning, let alone talking about the 6th or the 7th, then that's going to be a problem. So, or you're going to have to figure out a way to put another long man or 2 in your bullpen, and you got to kind of approach it that way. So, I'm not trying to sound the alarm here. And again, guys aren't fully stretched out. coming out of spring training and that they were throwing 90 pitches per start down in Sarasota, but it's got to be trending in that direction. But we know that I'm not expecting this rotation to be top five or in the American League or top 10 in the major leagues or even, you know, I think if you told me right now, Luke, I'll give you the opportunity. The starting rotation can be 16th in Major League Baseball in ERA. I'd probably sign up for that right now, given what it looks like on paper. But they have to find a way to navigate and get a little bit deeper in the games. I mean, they're just going to have to. But to your point, and I agree with your point, what's that going to look like? If it's giving up 4 runs, that's still not a pretty ERA. But generally speaking, with what we think this offense is going to be, that will still give you a chance to win. But if you give up 7 runs, well, then yeah, that's going to be a big time problem. So
Well, they had a nice lead on opening day. They had a nice thing going on, and it went away. And then they were in a tight game. And in the end, they needed the bats because Batista wasn't good enough on the back end. So
yeah,
we were rotation, length, depth, blah, 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 blah. What about the eighth and ninth inning?
yeah. Well, I mean,
What about when
Batista,
you're up 6-5, 6-4 in the eighth? Who's going to get you to the finish line? And they need better than what they had on opening day from Batista. And listen, I've been the guy from the beginning saying I am skeptical that he'll ever look like he looked 2 years ago because I'm kind of a grown up and have watched this a long time. I don't know where the bridge between one of the best things we've seen in 50 years of relief pitching here versus what this is going to be. Off to a choppy start.
yeah. But he also pitched well on Saturday, right? I mean, he struck out 3 on Saturday in a scoreless ninth inning. And I
He is
think
their closer now, right? That's what this is, right?
I think so. Now, is he their closer in the same way that he was 2 years ago, where he's going to pitch back-to-back nights, or maybe 3 out of 4 nights? Or, I mean, my goodness, we were talking about a guy who was giving them two inning saves at times 2 years ago. No, he's not going to be that. And I'm in agreement with you from the standpoint of, look, even if he never had the elbow injury, was he going to duplicate what he did in 2023 in the same way that when Zach Britton was perfect for a year? Could you expect him to keep doing that year after year? No, of course not. That doesn't mean he can't be really, really good. That doesn't mean he can't be an all-star reliever again. That doesn't mean that even this year, coming off of Tommy John surgery, that he can't be above average and be a really good asset for you in the bullpen. But if you're going to ask him to carry the entire load, then yeah, it's probably not going to go the way you need it to because it can't be one guy. It can't just be one guy. I've said this to you. You've heard me say this over and over. I've been a broken record now talking about how come September and then when you're getting ready for October, you better have 4 or 5 arms in your bullpen that you really, truly trust to pitch in just about any situation because that's that's the name of the game. Even in the regular season, it's become that way more so, but especially when you get into October. So yeah, I hear you. Batista struggled on Monday. I still want to give this guy a handful of outings to really establish himself, reacclimate himself to pitching in the majors again. Giving him time to recover after starts and making sure the arm's still feeling good and everything. But yeah, you're going to need other guys to step up in the process. That's why I was so pleased to see them do what they did on Monday, where they had a collaborative effort out of the pen to back up what Cade Povich did. I mean, Bauman, pitching back-to-back days and hanging up, getting a couple more outs without giving up a run. Dominguez, I thought looked good. That was good to see because we've talked a lot about what kind of a rough spring he had. I mentioned Keegan Aiken, who, could kind of sort of be graduating into a little more of a meaningful role in the bullpen. And then, I thought Cano looked great. I saw some people on social media, and I even had a couple, kind of say it to me, wondering why Batista went into the game even after the Orioles scored 4 runs. One, he was already warming up. And I think, again, they're at a point right now with him. They're trying to manage him physically in terms of not having him warm up 3 times a game and then not go in. They're not trying, they're not pitching him back-to-back days.
Yeah, he's not touching a baseball on Tuesday no matter what, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I would think, I don't know this, Nestor. I'm guessing it's probably until June that they start talking about him potentially pitching back-to-back days, right? And a lot of that's going to depend on pitch count and all of that. So, there's a little bit of management going on with him. It doesn't mean he's injured, but he's coming back from major elbow surgery. You're not just going to throw him into the lion's den and act like the last 2 years never happened and he's
Well,
2023 guy again.
as an example, let's use this. It's going to rain on Friday in Kansas City, right? So like
Hmm.
they might not get the game in. They might have a doubleheader on Saturday, Sunday, whatever they're going to do. If there's a game where it's 5-4 in the eighth and Kansas City's got two on and one out, two outs, whatever, you know, whoever's in there is going to have to go because they're not going to go grab him to try to save their ship on April the 9th. That they're not going to do that right now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's clear. He's not going to be a two-inning guy. They're not
No.
going to
Oh,
warm
no.
him up, bring him in, have him go sit on the bench for 8, 10, 12 minutes, however long the next day, and then come. They're not going to do that with him,
I'm
correct?
guessing they won't. I'm guessing.
That's June.
I don't even know if
Fair
that
enough.
scenario, I don't know if that's June. When I said June, I was saying more in terms of him pitching
Back to back days,
back
right?
to back nights. Maybe by August. And a lot of this is going to depend where are you in the wild card race? Where are you in the AL East division race? All of that. And the big factor here is we can set these arbitrary deadlines or these arbitrary dates. How's he feeling?
Well, he's got to get guys out,
Yeah,
which he didn't
right.
do on Monday.
Exactly.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, and again, and neither one of us are making that big of an issue of how he pitched Monday, but yeah, if he struggles, then yeah, you have to revisit when you're using him, no question. Just like any pitcher.
With me,
I
it's
mean,
never personal on the guys. It's
no.
somebody's got to get that guy out, and I
Well, I
don't know
mean,
who it is.
Craig Kimbrell last year was their closer until he wasn't anymore because he couldn't do the job. So there's going to be a lot of, with Batista especially, there's a lot of feeling out here. That's why it's so important that Yennier Cano pitched the way that he did on Monday, and Dominguez pitched the way that he did on Monday. And you're going to need other guys like Aiken and for better or for worse, Brian Baker, who actually has looked quite good his first couple outings. But you're going to need to pass the baton. Again, I don't know if Felix Batista at any point in 2025 is going to be that multi-inning guy. I don't know if you may just say we can't do that. And you know what? It might even be we have to be grown-ups here. We have to recognize that, yeah, Felix Batista did that 2 years ago. And what happened? He blew out his elbow. So maybe we need to say we need to treat him like Mariano Rivera. Remember, Mariano, greatest of all time, right? He was famously a one inning guy. You never saw him go more than one inning. He was one inning, right? Now he might do it back to back nights. He might do it 3 out of 4 nights, but one inning.
But you
It
only
might,
rev up the engine
yeah,
for one song, right?
it might
Literally.
be that with Batista, they
There's
say,
no encore. We don't sit pitchers
yeah,
down and get them back up. That's bad.
we've got to be grown-ups here and recognize that no matter how incredible his arm is when he's healthy, that he's still a human being. And
This
his
isn't Stratomatic baseball,
Yeah.
Luke
Well,
Jones,
and
right?
and that kind of goes back to what I was saying about, I saw some people questioning why'd you still bring Batista into the game. It's because he was warming up and you were revving up the engine and you want to try to get this guy some innings. And look, I'd rather have him pitching with a little bit of a cushion right now than a one-run lead because, well, we saw on Monday he's still not peak Batista or whatever peak Batista you hope is going to be this year. So that's I'm not saying that as a criticism. It's understandable. So yeah, you're trying to figure this out, and in the meantime, yeah, they're probably going to need Dominguez to close some games here and there, and they're probably going to need a Cano, or it might be a Gregory Soto because the ninth inning includes two lefty batters due up. And whether it's Soto, Aiken, whoever. So you might have to do a little bit of that on occasion. I think that's just where they are. So I think the good news where I do take a little more solace, even though I've expressed concern about the bullpen, I at least see upside with their arms that I think the talent is there, especially when you can get Kittredge back in the picture, you know, come June or whenever he's ready to go. He's starting to play catch and do some things. I mean, he's mobile. It's not like he's on crutches or anything like that. But they're going to need their bullpen to do a lot of heavy lifting. And that's where I look at the makeup right now and I say, okay, you don't have a long man really. So that's where I go back to the rotation and say these guys got to find a way to get a little bit deeper into games. And you feel good about Eflin. Kramer at least got into the sixth inning. I'll continue to say this. I like Cade Povich. After seeing what he looked like when he made his debut last summer and seeing how he profiled then, I see a pitcher who's much more competitive now. He just has to find a way to be more efficient. And when he can do that, I think he can be a legitimate major league starter. I'm not saying he's going to be an ace or anything crazy like that, but I think there's talent in there to like. I mean, he struck out 8 in 4 1/3. I mean, you don't strike out major league hitters without having ability, but he's got to, you can't be at 94 pitches in 4 1/3. I mean, that's just not going to
Well,
work.
he's
So,
nitpicky, right? I mean, that's we would crafty left-hander or whatever the
yeah,
modern version of Scott McGregor would be. But that's
and that's a good lineup he's facing now. Although I will say, I'd be remiss. Like, what is going on with Rafael Devers?
right.
I mean, he looks like Chris Davis, like late career Chris Davis right now. He's lost. I mean, he doesn't even look. He's not close. And I know he's dealt with shoulder issues. Both shoulders having issues the last year or so. But Povich going up against a good lineup. Keep in mind, this was his first opening day. He's pitching the home opener. There's a lot of pressure.
I said that's big for him. It felt
It
big for
is.
him.
So
A
that's
big
where I
crowd, the whole thing.
so
Yeah.
that's where I look at this and say, look, again, I don't want to, I'm not going to give the kid a standing ovation because he got through 4 1/3 innings, but he gave them a chance to win. And you need better. You need more efficiency. He's got to be better, more economical with his pitches, but he competed. And I think you'll take that. I mean, I liked what I saw for him way more than I saw from Charlie Morton, for example. So, see what he looks like next time out. But they definitely. I mean, this can't be Zach Eflin gives you a quality start and then you're just crossing your fingers the rest of the way through the rotation.
Well,
But
isn't
it
that really
but it
where
kind of feels like that's where they are
yeah,
right
I mean
now.
that's
Yeah,
where and we knew that a week
yeah,
ago, right? I mean, we come out of this thing and say it's a box of chocolates. I mean,
yeah.
Sagano is very much don't know,
I
never
mean,
done this
unknown. Yeah,
before, right? And I'm not going to judge him. Call me freak this week, and I'll tell you. Let me see 6 or 8 of these in order, in turn, the body of work when he can get to the sixth inning, or if he can get to the sixth inning. 35-year-old guy, right? So like, I don't
yeah.
know.
Well, and I'll also say this. I mean, Sagano and Morton, of course, that's why a lot of us were wondering, okay, you're spending 24 or not 24, $28 million on a 41-year-old pitcher who's had a really nice career, but he's 41, and a 35-year-old pitcher who had a heck of a career in Japan, but it was in Japan, So, but I will say this, and we mentioned him. Look, Dean Kramer over the last few years, I know he's been the guy that everyone's been quick to want to replace or move to the bullpen or what have you. But let's keep in mind 2022, 3.23 ERA, 2023, 4.12 ERA, 2024, 4.1 ERA. He's taken the ball, he's mostly stayed healthy, and he's given them a chance to win. If he can at least be that guy again, that's still going to help your rotation and help the overall makeup of your pitching staff. So, look, Dean Kramer, it's not a 1, it's not a 2, it's not a 3. On most contenders, he's probably not even a 4. He's probably a 5, but he's been a legitimate major league starter the last few years. It's not great. He hovers right around league average, but you're also not going to have 5 all-stars in your rotation, you know, unless you're the Dodgers, and maybe you can have that, although they can't keep pitchers healthy. So that's kind of a moot point anyway. But they're going to need Dean Kramer to be the best version of himself. That's for sure. Because unlike these other guys, he's 29, where these other guys you're talking about are mid to late 30s, or in Morton's case, early 40s. That you just, they kind of are what they are at this point. Whereas Kramer, you're hoping that he can at least be, the league average starter that he's been the last few years. Because, man, if they can't get that from him at the very least, then yeah, boy, you get to a point where you're really starting to wonder how this thing's going to hold together. And, that nightly quest for 27 outs just gets longer and longer when you don't have starting pitchers that can at least get you through 5 innings, even if it's not a shiny ERA.
Luke Jones is here. He is Baltimore Luke. He will be covering the great sport of Major League Baseball all season long here and out on social media. We are monitoring what's going on with the Ravens. We're monitoring what's happening with the Terps and the mess there. I took a selfie with Derek Queen. We're from Baltimore. That's why. And you can check all that out at social media. Luke and I will be at Fadley's on Wednesday. We're going to talk torpedo bats on Wednesday, so I want to give us some oxygen to do that. Before we do that, though, you do spend a lot of time at Major League Baseball Network and catching up. Anything around the sport the first week, other than the torpedo bats, that is worth speaking of, other than the fact that Atlanta goes under to San Diego. San Diego and LA are like perfect the first week. I mean, there were some gaudy starts and some concerning starts, but kind of we got our own pie here in Baltimore that we concern ourselves with. But it's a start of the season everywhere, and hope springs eternal even for the Red Sox fans I saw on Monday.
Yeah. You mentioned Atlanta, but not just that they're off to a bad start. Jurickson Profar popped for PEDs. I mean, he's got an 80-game suspension. I mean, that was a big signing for them, especially as Acuna's coming back from the ACL, still not ready to play, although he's going to be, not too long away. And then I saw, they put Reynaldo Lopez on the IL with the shoulder injury. So, I mean, for the Braves, it's just, it's kind of you look at them as one of the few teams in the NL. I kind of look at the makeup of the National League going into the season, and obviously, San Diego's off to a good start, so good for them. But you look at the overall National League, the Dodgers are overwhelmingly the best team in baseball. I mean, Vegas, look at their win total over under compared to anyone else. I mean, it's obvious, but you look at the National League, I kind of look at Atlanta at least before this week, because they are off to an alarmingly bad start, and now they have some attrition as well. But you look at them, I still look at the Phillies, even though they've got an older roster, especially some of their position talent. But those are the teams I really point to that have a chance to actually compete with the Dodgers, right? When you get into October, those are the kind of teams that you point to. But that Atlanta situation, that's not good. I mean, 0-5 is one thing. I mean, how many teams in baseball are going to have a 5-game losing streak over the course of the year? I mean, just about everyone. So you're not sounding the alarm that you're doomed, but you lose Profar, who was a big addition for you, and you're getting Spencer Strider back in the not too distant future, but well, what else going to happen? So that kind of stands out. The Brewers are 0-4. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about the torpedo bats, and I mentioned that in another segment to you. Yes, the Yankees did a lot of damage. It's a lot of bad pitching in that series for Milwaukee. So, they were one of the better stories last year when they traded Burns and everyone kind of wrote them off, and yet they still made it, still, uh, you know, took care of business and played into October until the Mets, knocked them out. But you look at that, and in the AL, I mean, the Red Sox were kind of becoming the media darling pick in the AL East with Garrett Cole going down and all the Orioles pitching concerns, and they're 1-4. And as I said, Rafael Devers, like he it's not just that he's over, it's that he's barely making contact. I mean, he's striking out at the rate he is. I mean, it's kind of Chris Davis like right now. Late career Chris Davis, not the good version of Chris Davis. So yeah, those are my early impressions. But you know me, man. You let the season breathe. You got to let the season breathe at least a couple weeks before you really start jumping to any conclusions, unless you're talking about injuries, and that's where it kind of comes back to the Orioles being one of those teams that they're dealing with it. Good news is I do expect Gunnar Henderson back. If not by the finale against the Red Sox, I expect him back early on this road trip. I think he's just about ready to go, and that'll go a long way. As much as we've talked about the offense doing what they've done, I'll remind everyone they've done that without their best player. So they are doing something right, even if the offense has been a little choppy in terms of feast or famine.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke. We are covering baseball. We are covering football. The NFL owners' meetings, which I am banned from, and Luke can't be. I can do a lot of things to Luke Jones, but I am not going to break out that Elon Musk chainsaw and slice him in half and send half of them to Florida and half of them to Camden Yards. I had all of them in Toronto last week. Two countries, one baseball team, and the Orioles headed off to Kansas City this weekend. We are headed, thankfully, for my second crab cake of the week at Fadley's. We're going to be at Fadley's on Wednesday. I will have these scratch offs for the Maryland Lottery, the Magic 8-Ball scratch offs to give away. Come on down, say hello. The great Mark Viviano will join us. I don't know if Luke's ever done a segment with Mark Viviano, but that might happen because Luke's going to join us and talk about juiced bats in New York. Come up with a new name for that. I think I got to go up to New York soon and go up to the Bronx and get some Nasty Nestor T-shirts at a deep, deep, deep discount in the Bronx right now. So I'll be doing that at some point over the next couple of weeks as well. We're also going to have Terps talk here. I'm going to be chasing some people down to discuss the NIL, the portal, and I mean, as Terps fans, we're all looking at this and saying, all right, we don't recognize the new Wild Wild West. They don't recognize it in Indiana either, where everybody's in the portal. I am not in the portal, and the only April Fool we have here is, well, me, I guess. I am Nestor. He is Luke. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop with, my name rhymes with Jester, Nestor, Jester. We're Baltimore positive. Stay with us. No fooling.